Hi, and welcome to Wine and Food from a consumer perspective. I'm Vince Wallace. I'm not a sommelier. I don't work in a wine shop, or am I in the wine industry. I just happen to be an individual who likes wine, who enjoys food, and I really enjoy the idea of pairing wine and food together. There's a really neat synergistic effect that happens when you get a good bottle of wine and a good meal. Today, we're just going to focus on the beginnings, the bottle of wine. So when you look at the bottle of wine, it should have two labels. There should be a front label, the label that's actually going to attract you to the wine, and then a back label. The back label usually has a little more information about the wine. So on the front, you can see the label, hopefully, in a bottle of wine that you're probably going to want to enjoy more than once. It should have the region that the wine is from and the type of grape that it is. So in this particular case, this is a Pinot Noir. So I know just from, consuming wine over the years that good Pinot Noirs come from Oregon. But not only from Oregon, they come from the west side of Oregon in the Willamette Valley. So the fact that this is a Pinot Noir grape that was grown in Willamette Valley, that's encouraging to me. So I already know, just based on that I have a good chance of getting a Pinot Noir that I'm going to enjoy that fits my palate. Then when you go to the back, and it might be on the front, it'll probably tell you the alcohol by volume, either on the back or the front. And the alcohol by volume is somewhat interesting as well, because if it's a white wine, chances are it'll be between 10 and 13%. And if it's a red wine, it'll be between 13 and 15%. So that's kind of another clue when you look at the alcohol by volume. If that ABV value is kind of out of whack on the general guidelines that fall within whites and reds, that might give you a reason to pause and say, well, maybe that's not the wine for me today. Now, not all bottles will have two labels. And if they do have two labels, the back label may not have any information. So for me personally, I would probably avoid that bottle of wine. The reason why is it means that whoever made it isn't proud of their wine because they don't want to tell you anything about it. And two, it might just be a sort of a mass-produced, very generic sort of right down the middle type of wine that most people can enjoy, but maybe not be able to get the real characteristics of a Pinot Noir in this particular case. So I would lean toward a bottle that has two labels. Obviously, the label itself that attracts you to the wine, and then the back that's going to tell you something about the wine. Because one, that tells me that, okay, well, whoever made this wine, the winemaker or the vineyard or the producer, actually has some pride in their wine because they want to tell you about it. It's similar to going to a wine tasting room, and the winemaker's there. If the winemaker's sitting there and telling you about the wine and telling you, why they made the wine and how they go about their process and the story behind the actual making of the wine, that's part of the wine story, right? That's part of the enjoyment, right? Understanding, the whys of the wine itself. So one thing you can actually look at too when you're on the back, it might have some descriptions. And these descriptions, it sounds as though they're made up, but in the wine industry, they're usually kind of standard descriptions for different types of things. It'll say peppery or blackberry, or maybe have a raspberry or apricot, depending on whether it's a red wine or a white wine. And at some point, you'll start getting familiar with those terms, and those terms will eventually match your palate. Because some people like wines that are a little spicier, have a little bite to them. And others like their wines to finish with a nice, smooth finish. So that should be part of the description. As you get familiar with the description on the wines on the back, it'll also sort of match up with your palate. Because the last thing you want to do, after, a day of work, or, you've got a weekend with friends and you've got some wine sitting at the table, you want to have a wine that you're going to enjoy. And so the better, the most probable way of actually enjoying your wine is to actually get more understanding of what you're buying. And I will say that, you go to the grocery store, you go to the wine shop, wherever it may be, and you'll see wines, $15, $30, $100. The price of the wine in some ways, there is some significance to it. and we'll talk about that later. But as a general rule, you can find a good bottle of wine between $15 and $35, $40. Especially a good one that's going to fit your palate and at some point pair well with your meal. So there's a lot more I can talk about this wine, but I'm going to keep it fairly straightforward, keep these episodes really specific to a topic. And so that way, you, the consumer, if you decide you want to go to the grocery store or the wine shop, wherever it may be, and buy you some wine, you can pull up one of the episodes that might intrigue you, or you want a refresher. You can just pull it up real quick, 5 or 6 minutes, look through the video, get that information out, go to the store, get yourself a good bottle of wine that you have a little education, and enjoy. So having said that, cheers.